What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 29 of the Chat It Up podcast. As always, I'm your host, Shooter, bringing you interviews, news, and reviews about all things Upper Peninsula. Hope you all had a wonderful weekend. I spent mine camping at Van Riper State Park over in Michigami. So I'm a little tired, and I definitely smell like a campfire, but I had a great time, that's for sure. So I've got a really great interview for you guys this week, but before we get to that, let's run through a few segments. So first off, it's Youper News, and my first piece of Youper News is one that I'm sure everyone's already seen, and that's this controversy with Mountain Dew in a recent ad campaign where they made the UP a part of Wisconsin on their map. Now, honestly, this isn't anything new. It's been happening to the UP for years and years on various maps. I mean, hell, sometimes we're not even on maps where we're just left off completely. But, of course, we're in the keyboard warrior era that we live in, so there obviously was then social media outrage. So much so, in fact, that Mountain Dew responded, and they're going to be doing a special Upper Peninsula Mountain Dew bottle as a part of this promotion that they're doing, basically highlighting all of the states in America. So, it's definitely cool that we get our own bottle logo, but a part of me is a little cynical, and I wonder if the whole thing was deliberate. The same thing happened a few years ago with another company and their CEO, and I'll avoid going into the specifics on that because I don't want to ruffle any feathers or give them any free promotion, but in my opinion, that event also seems staged, and I get that controversy sells, and it's a really easy way to make something go viral. I mean, you basically stop the outrage by extending an olive branch to the locals, and now you have the approximately 300,000 residents of the UP tuned into your brand, and, the national recognition is cool, but personally, I'd rather it be genuine instead of this kind of backhanded marketing scheme. But I guess at this point, beggars can't be choosers. My second piece of Youper news is that I made the news. Well, sort of anyways. So there's a website called The Pasty Potato, and it's basically the UP's version of The Onion, which The Onion is all of the articles are jokes and are satire and are meant to be funny. And so over the weekend, the Pasty Potato, they released an article that I've written a new book, like a sequel to Y is for Youper called T is for Troll, and that I'm working on another one for Illinois called F is for Fibs. So while I'm here to say that this is purely a joke and I've not written either of these books, I'm going to give a free plug to this site. They've got a Facebook page and a Twitter, and I think they have an Instagram too. So the Pasty Potato, definitely go and check it out. The articles are absolutely hilarious, and whoever is behind this site, if you're listening to this, you have an open invitation to come on this podcast, because I would love to sit down and chat with you about your simple yet genius idea of doing satire about the UP, because it's absolutely genius. If you're not listening to this, but somebody who is listening happens to know who is behind this site, feel free to slide into my DMs with whatever info you can give me. If it leads to figuring out who this mystery person is behind this site, there will definitely be some free swag in it for you. Hell, I might even meet up with you and buy you a pasty, because myself and a few of my friends, we've been doing some digging and some internet sleuthing, and we have yet to come up with anything concrete. So help us solve this mystery and figure out who's running the Pasty Potato. All right, so that was Youper News. Now we'll move into This Day in Youper History, which is brought to you by the good folks at pasty.com and the Pasty Central Facebook page. Again, that's pasty.com and the Pasty Central Facebook page. So here is July 22nd, This Day in Youper History.
Pasty Central Day in History, July 22nd. On this day in 1908, Alfred J. Fisher formed the Fisher Body Company. Fisher Body built millions of automobile bodies for General Motors, each of which wore a tiny badge on the panel just ahead of the front door that said Body by Fisher. The wealth of the Fisher brothers enabled them to purchase and promote their private retreat in Michigan's Upper Peninsula, known as the Sylvania Club. 30 square miles of landlocked lakes and virgin timber in the heart of the Ottawa National Forest, which entertained regular visitors such as President Eisenhower, Lawrence Welk, and Bing Crosby in its heyday. In 1966, the Forest Service purchased the property known today as the Sylvania Wilderness Area. Pasty Central Day in History, July 22nd.
All right. Thanks again to Pasty.com and the Pasty Central Facebook page for this day in Yooper history. It's time for this week's interview, and it is with my friend Nheena Itner. Nheena is the executive director of the Upper Peninsula Children's Museum, and her story is not only cool and inspiring, but it's also a lot of fun. But I'm going to just let her tell you it because she'll probably do a way better job than I ever could. So, without further ado, let's chat it up. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am sitting here with Nheena Itner. Nheena, thank you for coming on the podcast. I'm super pumped.
My pleasure.
Unbeknownst to you, when I first sat down before I started doing this whole podcast, I sat down and said, I'm going to make a list of everybody that I think would be great to kind of talk to. And you were one of the first people on that list.
Oh, well,
so
I'm honored.
It's taken a year for me to get around to you on the list, but you were on that very first list that I did,
you.
so I appreciate you coming on. So,
thank you.
So I'll kind of let the cat out of the bag right away. Obviously, you're not a born and raised Yooper, right? You're from Midland,
I'm
correct?
from Midland, Michigan. I am.
Okay, so when you look back and you think of growing up in Midland, what comes to mind for you?
What comes to mind in Midland? Well, Midland was like an amazing place to live.
Okay.
And, in all of those experiences that I had growing up in that particular town, because it was a really very wealthy town, but very pretentious town.
Okay.
Shh, don't tell anybody in Midland I said that. But it's very pretentious. And so much wealth and so much the haves and have-nots. But yet, it had so much opportunity.
Sure.
Incredible opportunity. So I grew up with things to do and places to go and programs to be a part of. Mm-hmm. And then when I moved to Marquette in 1980, it was a different world back then.
Sure.
I moved to Marquette because I had gotten married, mm-hmm. and I was an art teacher. Mm-hmm. And so I started teaching art in Ishpeming. And it was just a different world.
Right.
And so one of my dreams was to bring some of the things that I'd grown up with, the programs and the opportunities, to these people.
Sure.
That I was teaching.
Okay.
And then, of course, in Ishpeming, I had great fun things. And then, of course, but I lived in Marquette.
Right.
And then, of course, Marquette became my heart and soul and my love. And I will never leave this place.
I love to hear you talk about it, but just to backtrack just a little bit, so when you mentioned kind of, coming up to Marquette and bringing kind of the experiences and the things that you kind of grew up with, and the programs and the things that you enjoyed, do you feel like being exposed to that was really what kind of made you know that you wanted to go into art education, was just having a love for it very early on, or is that something that kind of grew over time?
Art was, I was a real tunnel visioned person.
Okay.
I loved art in when I was in high school, elementary school. I loved art. Mm-hmm. And then when I went to the University of Michigan, I only wanted to go into art. Now I think back, I think, man, I wish I would have tried all these other things. I mean, really, I wish I could have been a volcanologist. That was the thing my dream in life. But, I'm a driven person.
Sure.
I was going to be an art teacher. That's what I was going to be, and that's what I became. And I didn't try anything else.
Sure.
But yet, art has been is systemic in me. It's what I love, and and the culture, arts and culture, and it just builds a rich community, and if a person is exposed to arts and cultures, they become a stronger, richer, more interesting person. So so that it was really a driving force.
Yeah. As far as the education or teaching side of your art education, did you always kind of have that desire to teach people? Because, I mean, it takes a special person to be a teacher. As a former teacher, I feel like I can kind of say that, it's not for everybody. So
well, but that's an interesting thing, though, is I love my art. I mean, I do art.
Yeah, you have art everywhere. It's
he's
beautiful.
sitting in my office, which is a sensory overload. but yet I was never all that good.
Okay.
And so but when you go to art school in university setting, oftentimes you become a jack of all trades and a master of nothing.
Sure.
And that's kind of what I was. I dabble, but I could teach, jewelry. I could teach ceramics. I could teach painting. I had experienced all of it. And but I was never good enough to be like a real artist.
Okay.
And although I participated in shows, I've gotten best of shows. But that's not my art. Now is this children's museum.
Sure.
But it's it's that creative outlet.
Yes.
That thing that you kind of like a piece of clay that you can create into something else. I mean, that's what I see my day-to-day life.
Sure, I can totally relate to that. Is there any one type of art that you're more drawn to? I mean, because art is so all-encompassing of a word, but is there anything you feel more of a pull towards?
I like to draw.
You like to draw?
These drawings. I just like to draw images. But then, I really love painting, but I was never all that good at it.
Sure.
Someday, maybe. I took a couple workshops that I came out with some nice pieces.
Yeah, there you go. So, you said you went to U of M, and you kind of moved up here in 1980. Was there any sort of, in-between time before you moved up to the UP, or was it like a fresh out of school?
No,
and then
I taught.
Did?
I taught downstate.
Okay, whereabouts?
In Dundee.
Dundee, okay.
Actually, Everett. I taught in Everett first, which is a little teeny-weeny town.
Sure.
And filled a maternity leave, and then I went to Dundee, and I taught there until I moved up here in 1980.
Okay, so all of a sudden you move up to the UP.
UP.
Had you had a lot of experience with coming up here prior to that? No? So was it like you just came up here blind, so to speak? I mean, what was that like for you?
My husband at the time, and I'm no longer married to him, but he was somebody who lived next door to me in Midland, and so I've known him all my life, and his family was from the UP. And so this was utopia.
Yes.
He would, when he was a kid, they would take the kids the first day after school. They'd take them over that doggone bridge, and they'd drop them off in the farm in Eben Junction, and they'd take off their belts. That was always what he said. We'd take off our belts, and we'd put rope in there, and then they would just play on the farm.
Sure.
And in Eben Junction. So this was utopia. But my first exposure to the Upper Peninsula, and mind you, I'm a city girl. I'm a city girl, like it or not. I like baths, at night. I like my electricity. I like all the amenities. I was pampered as a child, actually.
Right.
And so, but my ex-husband, the utopia was like the old shack in the woods,
of
the UP,
yeah.
where we were cooking morel mushrooms and maggots were jumping out of them. And that was like, oh my God. But then, we moved to Marquette, and like my dad would come up here and he'd say, "Oh, Neen, you moved to the fringe of the ice cap. What are you doing, honey? What are you doing?" But we lived in just a place on 4th Street for a while, and then we moved to a house on Lakewood Lane.
Okay.
Where you can't live by this lake and not just become completely enamored with it.
True.
It becomes like a member of your family, and the personality just becomes a part of everyday life, and so I it's I totally fell in love, hook, line, and sinker. But like I said, 1980 was a different time in this town. And this town, and one of the things I've always thought about when you move to Marquette, you can come from Ann Arbor, you can come from Detroit, you can come from all these other metropolises, and you might participate in the arts in these other places, in as a like a performance goer or a theater goer. But here you can actually do it.
Absolutely.
And that's what the difference was. When I came here, I realized fairly soon, I looked around and I'd say, hey, we need a children's museum, or hey, we need a park, or hey, I realized no, it was me. I had to be the driving force in some of these projects because I couldn't look to other people, but I could do it. And I don't think I could have done any of what I've done in my life in Ann Arbor if I would have stayed there. I would have just been a worker person.
Okay,
but here, I've done I've been able to do dreams of mine.
Absolutely.
Because of this is, but everybody can do that. It seems like everyone can here. Mm-hmm. It's just it's really ripe for that kind of flourishing ideas.
I would agree with you, and that's very insightful of you to kind of have that realization that doing it here, you may not have had the same outlook or story had you not come to the UP.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Can you walk me through a little bit how the transition kind of out of teaching happened? And
yeah, well, I was teaching in Ishpeming because when I first moved to Marquette, I got the job immediately, which was kind of crazy and fun in this place that I couldn't even understand half the dialects that were coming at me. But I loved them. Ishpeming was like the most amazingly embracing community for this young teacher that I was.
Yeah.
And I mean, my students, I had wonderful students. I love the fact that my students will come and they'll say, "Hi, Mrs. Itner." And whoa, I commanded respect once, but I love it. I have this whole band of these people who are grown up now that come to see me here at the museum and remind me of fun things. But the teaching in Ishpeming was really good, and then I started having babies, mm-hmm. and I had my first child in 1984.
Okay,
and then I love my baby, but boy, she drove me back to work. So after 10 months, I went back to work again. Like, woo! That was a very all consuming.
Right.
And I love her. I don't. But I don't know if I was really meant to be a stay-at-home mom. But then I went back to work, and then I had my second child in 1987, and within about a month of giving birth, I gutted my basement and started a business, a home-based business of painted clothing.
Okay.
And so I did that at home, and then at about the same time, I started this kind of idea that this place needed a children's museum. This community needed a children's museum. So in 1987 is really when I started that whole thing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes, and I had an opportunity at that time to kind of get involved in the Kellogg Foundation, and it was the Kellogg Youth Initiatives Partnership. And what they were doing is trying to just educate leaders about the needs of kids. And Kellogg did a very interesting study at that time where they chose four different communities in the state of Michigan. They took Battle Creek, Detroit, and Alger and Marquette. So
okay.
Yeah. So what kind of impact we have on those communities. So one of the things they did was they took people like me, and I just randomly said yes. I think it was because I was on maternity leave, and I thought, oh yeah, okay, I'll do that. And they educated me about youth programs and what makes an exemplary youth program. And in my little head, I was thinking of all these different things, but but one of them was this children's museum. But they taught me what a foundation was. I didn't know what philanthropy was. I didn't know any of that. And so they basically, it was just fortuitous for me because I was ready. I was like, I was at that point where I was soaking in any little bit of knowledge I could, and then I blurted it out in something that I started to work on. But so that's when I gathered people, and I realized there was a crazy time in my life when I had this harebrained idea of doing this children's museum, and so I actually got on the docket of different service clubs. And I don't even know how in God's name I ever had the guts to stand up in front of all these people and tell them that I think they should build a children's museum. And these people would look at me like, what? I remember the noon Rotary at Holiday Inn, this whole group of men in the back thought I was like a nutcase. I think they thought I really had some issues. But anyway, but you know what? Those were the epiphany moments when I realized it wasn't them that was going to build a children's museum. It had to be me, and I had to figure out how. So that's when we started gathering people, and we started thinking and dreaming and scheming, and so and then I also found that in all the different projects I've been in, oftentimes projects of this magnitude, you have to have like just one crazy person who's never going to give up. And I think that's what I was for this organization. That's what I was for the Skate Plaza. Just something that I was never going to give up. I will stick with that until the bitter end.
Sure, because I'm guessing, as you kind of alluded to with, the guys looking at you like you're crazy, not everybody can see the vision. And so I'm sure you obviously run into then your fair share of naysayers.
But here's the other thing that I think is something about me personally that is I have a problem seeing the negative in things. And that's not really good because I need people around me to say, to pull my reins in.
Sure.
But I would not let anyone say that to me when I started this project. All I could see was possibility. All I could see. That's all. So I kept going at it. And then I surrounded myself with people who, when we would have one failure after another, we'd all just say, oh, okay, failed that one. Well, okay, we're going to keep going.
Right.
And so then we'd go on with the next thing. I remember I one partner was my assistant, and he would just say, okay, cry a little bit, now let's move on.
That's a good way to kind of, or a good perspective to have. Yeah. I also really like that you brought up that, this idea first started in the late 80s, but I mean, you really didn't have like concrete, okay, we're there till 1991, right?
Oh, so, yeah, I know.
I mean, so
I know.
that's 4 years. It's not like this happened overnight. It's like a 4-year grind to make that happen.
And I've helped countless people who have wanted to do like projects in other places. And I always, that's a really tough pill for people to swallow. It's not going to happen in a year. It's not going to happen overnight.
Right.
It just doesn't.
No.
And you have to be okay with that. And I mean, there was a funny thing when we used to meet at my house.
Okay.
And it was funny because we would always have, the people would come to my house and I would always put out wine and everybody'd have a notebook. And so my children one time were playing meeting and they got out wine glasses and notebooks.
That's
We're
great.
having a meeting, they said.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, right. I still believe all meetings need wine, but that's wine and candy. Those are two things.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So around 1991 or 92 when you really kind of started offering programs, how did getting this spot, this building, I mean, how did everything kind of fall into place for you?
It was a crazy ride, but what happened was, again, the Kellogg Foundation, they bought into us, but we decided to take this building downtown, it was an industrial part of downtown.
Wasn't this a warehouse?
It was a big warehouse. It was all cold storage, and it was filled with people who were in the military, who were like overseas, and all of their belongings were here. And it was just a creepy place with just lights hanging from the ceiling on strings, and there was an elevator where you had to put literally two wires together, and it would bring you up. We didn't have any money at the very beginning, nothing.
Sure.
But there again another epiphany where the Kellogg Foundation they funded programming. They didn't fund bricks and mortar.
Sure.
And then suddenly somebody said, let's design the Children's Museum through a program with kids.
Sure.
Oh my God.
Genius.
Absolute genius. So that's exactly what we did.
Yeah.
And so the Kellogg Foundation invested in us for 3 years. And then, because sometimes when you've got a bandwagon that's rolling down the street, others jump on your bandwagon. So that's exactly what happened.
Sure.
They gave us credibility.
Yeah.
And then by designing it with kids, gave us a uniqueness that was touted by a lot of other places, and people would come here to watch and see what happened and look at the unique things that these kids were coming up with, and and that was also just right. We believed in kids. We believe in their unique ideas. They're kind of, they're ideas that aren't, they aren't influenced by a lot of outside things. They're just fresh, fun, exciting ideas. They're not influenced by all these feelings of embarrassment or anything like that. But yeah, so we pretty much did that, and we started doing that in 1991 is when we got incorporated, got our nonprofit status. Then we inhabited this building. Then we kind of needed some tenants, and so we had some tenants, but then our tenants left us. And Angela's Bakery was still down there, though. That was always down there. And then, but then we kind of partnered with Gala Joy, and he did the creative performance workshops, and so we had kids in there performing and practicing circus tricks and stuff. But then we had, there was a building inspector guy we would always get scared when he'd come up here. And, oh no! And anyway, yeah, we made it through all that.
Well, and again, it wasn't an overnight thing. I mean, I don't think you made your first major renovations till like at least 1995.
And we opened our doors to the first exhibit hall in 1997, and it was interesting. And it was interesting because we were doing a lot in here. We had to do just systemic stuff. We had to change the heating, and we had to do everything. Electricity, everything. And a lot of it was being done by volunteer laborers and labor groups and service clubs and but really what made the community get all excited though is when we put scaffolding outside to fix a window or something, and suddenly everyone, whoa, they're doing something.
Oh yeah, right, building. Yeah, when they can see it from the exterior for sure.
Right. So yeah, but we had. When we were building this and designing it, we were engaging tons and tons of partners, and those partners then became donors, and that was a real big part of how we did everything.
Sure, and I mean, it's still a big part of how you do things to this day. One of the things that I had down here is, your love of this community definitely shines through, and you're constantly helping out with not only fundraisers for here, but other people's fundraisers, and you're constantly getting involved in so many different ways year in and year out. What do you think it is that keeps the motor going, that gives you that drive year in and year out to kind of, keep raising those funds and keep having, the attitude you do? Because, I mean, you're kind of the Energizer Bunny.
Yeah, well, I'm getting old. It's all about people, I'm doing this because it's just even helps people, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, everything I do, everything, I think I feel most proud because I'm building places and things to help other people.
Sure.
And, it's interesting because I always said, I'm building a children's museum for my kids. And so to have them go there. But when my kids, by the time I opened the museum, they were too old.
Right.
I didn't really care about the children. I had to drag them here. I remember I had to drag my oldest daughter here for the opening, a grand opening, because she didn't really want to come, and she was just a teenager.
Yeah.
And so I said, honey, here's a snake. You can hold a snake, and everyone will think you're so amazing. You'll be holding a snake. And then the snake pooped all over her and all right in her shoe, so it was pretty horrible. But anyway, I probably in my life, I'm most proud of my children and my grandchildren now. But it's also the fact that I've tried to help other people.
Sure.
It's just a joy to be able to walk through the museum and see kids laughing and parents playing with their kids and then, if there's another organization that's doing a fundraiser, if I can help in any way with, yeah, I will. I will never say no.
Even playing basketball.
Yeah, right. Even playing basketball. But those kind of things are fun.
They are.
I'm not very good at them, but those are always fun things.
Now, obviously, you're not just a fundraiser. So what kind of really goes into the day-to-day life for you here as the executive director?
That's very smart, though, Scott, because I am not a professional fundraiser.
No.
And people always think I am, but I don't have the savvy of a fundraiser. I've learned a lot through the trenches, working in the trenches. But every single day here is interesting, is different. And I get distracted a lot with different things. But it's just it's hard to even describe. But it's just different every day. I'm helping paint a sign, or I might be writing a grant. I do a lot of grant writing. I do a lot of thinking through events. I do a lot of HR stuff, just silly HR stuff that always seems to get in the way. Those are things that never go away. Do the bills, I got to process the POS, I've got to, do the payroll and, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's, every day is different.
Would you say that the fact that every day is different is what you kind of enjoy most about the job, or is there something kind of more that sticks out as really kind of your favorite part of all this?
I like feeling like I accomplish things that are good. I'm on a lot of boards too.
Sure.
But everything comes back to this children's museum. And I'll be on other boards because I think that my involvement in that board will help this place.
Sure.
And this place is my heart and soul. I always call it my third child with special needs. But yeah, I do everything for this place.
Right.
And people keep asking me, "Aren't you going to retire?" And I am. I am going to retire one day. And I'm kind of trying to start seeing. I'm kind of trying to see that date in my head, but the problem is that this place and everything I do, my boards, my people, the people I see on the streets, they're all part of my self-concept. It's who I am.
Okay.
And when I take it away, I'm not sure who I am anymore. I'll have to reinvent myself. I know people think, people retire all the time, but I just adore what I do. I adore everything. I adore all the people, all the conversations. Like right now, the symphony is in the back room meeting.
Sure.
That was the meeting that I was supposed to be at that I forgot
wow.
about.
I stepped above the symphony.
You did.
Don't need to toot my own horn, but
yeah.
Beep beep.
But all of those things I think help to. I feel like I'm doing something good for others, but it's also doing something huge for me too.
Sure.
Because it's what I love to do. I love just doing things.
what sort of what challenges you the most about running this place?
Well, I say I love the people, but the HR issues are the hardest things for me.
Sure.
Because I like everyone to be happy and get along, and when they don't, it's like, oh, I don't know how to deal with that one.
Right.
But I'm a person too that, like I have a current issue right now that I had to really, I have this basic philosophy that when something comes at me, I have to blow away the smoke of the emotions. I have to figure out what the problem is underneath everything, and I've got to try to address that instead of the emotions that are floating everywhere. And so this current problem, I have spent a month researching it.
Sure.
Just talking to people and listening to the advice people are giving, and I finally made my decisions but I'm making the decisions. What is the best thing for this organization?
Sure.
So this organization can be strong and have the backbone and the policies in place to be able to, when this problem happens again, to be able to nip it in the bud.
Sure.
But people are people, and we have a lot of diverse people who work here.
Sure.
And I love diversity. I love people who are different and different ways of thinking, and young people, and I love all that. But then people have issues,
Sure.
And that's probably my biggest challenge.
That's okay. You did a great job answering that.
That's right.
You've done so many different events and cool programs and exhibits and such over the years. Are there any that really kind of stand out to you that have been like real, close to your heart, or ones that you kind of find as like some of your favorites that you've done? Well,
I do tell the story of designing the bathrooms. That was a great, so it's kind of a long story, but I'll try to do a little synopsis of it. We had to design bathrooms, and we had some design problems because there was a big pole in the middle of the room, and so what we did was, there was a teacher over at Nheena High School, and he was a CAD teacher, and he came to me and he said, Nheena, I want my kids to design something real. They're designing like sports facilities, and then none of it's going to happen. What can they design there? So what we did was we took these kids, and there were like 8 boys and like 1 girl. And we took them through this whole, I had like Barry Polson come in and
Sure.
talk about, architecture, and I had plumbers come in and blah, blah, blah. They designed checkered floor bathrooms, just black and white, stupid damn things. And I was like, whoa, okay, this is part of our design process, our designosaurus, we call it. And then one of my partners at Northern Initiative says, let's get a bus and take these kids down to Kohler, Wisconsin. So we did. We took these kids down to Kohler, Wisconsin. We took them to the toilet factory. We took them through that whole bathroom design center, where they have like Gothic bathrooms and country bathrooms,
sure.
and then they came back to Marquette, or to Nagani, and they designed go and learn bathrooms. These kind of like, and then one of them was a woodland theme, and because we had a pipe in the middle of the bathroom, they made the urinal in the pipe, so it was a tree.
Yep.
So you pee on a tree.
Pee on a tree.
Just
probably my favorite thing about this place.
Right.
I'm not gonna lie.
I know. So
I love it.
that whole design concept. And so what they did then, they were just so proud of what they decided. So then I went back to the giving people at Kohler, and I said, would you guys ever fund this project? Well, they said, no, we don't, because you're out of our philanthropic circle, but come to the American Club. I'll take you guys, I'll take you guys out for lunch, and you guys can pitch something to me. Mm-hmm. So these kids got dressed in their little suits and ties and their little fancy outfits, and they went down. We took them to American Club. They had the 3x5 cards and blueprints and everything. That guy said to me later, he said, all the 20-some years I've been doing this, he said, that was the most, heartfelt, most wonderful presentation I've ever seen from these kids. So he ended up then not being able to give us money, but he gave us all the fixtures, everything. Now, fast forward 22 years later, probably one faucet is left,
right?
And the urinal doesn't really work very well. It's a sporadic flusher. But you know what? That was just true to this whole like empowering kids and making something really amazing happen.
Yeah, that's a great story.
I know. It was just a lovely thing. And then recently we had to change out the toilets because we had to get higher capacity toilets because they were always plugging up. And then we had a whole other kind of a process with that where you could name a toilet kind of a thing. And so now we have little tiny toilets down there. Yeah.
Okay, nice.
Yeah. I made my staff put bars on either side because I'll tell you, trying to go to the bathroom on those and get up was a little challenge.
So you kind of just briefly mentioned, 22 years later, I'm assuming then you have all sorts of people come through here with their kids that were here as kids.
Gosh, yeah.
And maybe even their kids' kids.
Oh, yeah.
That's got to be it's got to be a pretty surreal but pretty neat.
It is pretty cool. And I was telling someone that just last night at a grants award for Kiwanis. I said, I've got some kids coming now with their grandkids. They're so, and that it all kind of works that way. But here's something though that I have to say. I build this museum, I watch the museum, but I have gotten the greatest joy of all, the greatest absolute joy of all, is taking that little 4-year-old grandson of mine and playing here. Oh my God. It made me so proud because we played hard and it wasn't like taking him to the park. It wasn't the play that we have at home. Mm-hmm. It was a whole different kind of play. It was imagination. It was like we were play actors in some performance, and his imagination was just soaring, and he was telling me things that he normally. Oh my God! It was like perfect. Of course, my staff hates it when I do that, play with my grandchildren, because I come back with this laundry list of things that need to get fixed or changed. Like we gotta have a button for this, and Monty wants this, and Monty wants that. But oh my God, it was wonderful. It made me think, okay, Nheena, yep, it's all okay now. Yeah, it's okay now. You could probably retire now because that was perfect. To play with that little boy of mine.
That's really great.
Yeah.
It seems like there's a never-ending kind of cycle of new and cool things that are like going on here for the kids. Is there any kind of stuff coming up that you'd want to plug or kind of put out there?
We have that body exhibit, which is my cross to bear. But I only have one exhibits guy, and my one exhibits guy is pulled in every direction, and he's trying really hard to build this exhibit, but yet the toys break, the cars break, the lights go out, everything needs to get fixed, and especially at this very busy time, he'll be able to spend more time on it in September. But that exhibit will be really super cool when that's all done. It's going to be super cool. And we just opened up the head again, and the head had a whole new redo, and Liz Yellen helped us with that, and we had a couple of other people who participate in it as well, making it happen. But a lot of times we go back and just sort of embellish other things. Like we had Trevor Flynn with Flynn Designs came one day with his kids, and he said, I can help you put a green screen in there. So with his initiative and his, soliciting his parent company, we were able to put a whole green screen downstairs, which is like phenomenal. And another thing that I sit with my little grandson and laugh and laugh and laugh and oh my gosh, I'm going on it's a Ferris wheel or whatever. So anyway, it's fun.
Well, and it's a great example of you had talked about you love to help people. And this place is a prime example of not only you helping people, but then the community and people helping you, banding together and making cool stuff happen.
Yeah,
fun stuff happen.
Yeah, it is. And we're also a real grassroots place, which is
very much so.
Marquette is a community that comes together. It comes together. You do a call for something, and they will come. They will do it. And I think I always call us the quintessential repurposers, because everything you see in this office was somebody else's at some point. And
right.
Honestly, everything. I don't think there's anything in here that I bought new, but maybe these pens right here. But, and I've been sitting at this desk for how many years?
Right.
But I think that's really special, because when you give me the toys that your child had played with, but they're still in peak condition, and you give those to me, you feel invested in this place. Mm-hmm. You feel like, you're giving and you're helping another kid to have fun. So that happens all the time. People are very generous with us, very, very generous.
I love it.
It's really
it's
nice.
It's all great stuff.
It's really
is.
It's a reflection of this community.
Yeah.
But where I'm not so sure. I mean, I go to children's museums all over the country, and this one is special.
I would agree. I've only been to a few, but this one is definitely, there's something special about it. Must be something in the water a block over.
Yeah, right. Something in that water, yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to add that I didn't touch on? Because we've hit like every checkbox that I was hoping to hit and then some. So I don't know if there's anything else you feel like you kind of want to add.
Well, I guess for me it would be just thanking this community for being what it is, and who they are, and entertaining me with all these ideas, and being a part of it. I think about when I did the skate plaza, how many people rose to help make that happen.
Sure.
And Stu Bradley, who was at my side every day, Herb Freeborn, who helped gather those kids. I mean, just all of those things are really pretty cool, pretty special things, and this museum is filled with stories and people, and it's all about a community. I'm just lucky that I live here. I'll never leave, and I can bring my dog to work every day.
Perfect,
sitting on my desk.
So I'm going to throw you for a huge curveball, because I know you haven't listened to the podcast, so you don't know this, but I end every single podcast with the same question. And that question is, how do you like your pasty?
How do I like my pasty? I'm vegetarian.
Okay, so you like a vegetarian pasty?
I'm a vegetarian. I like Laurie's vegetarian pasties.
Okay, fair enough. Or do you put any ketchup? Or
I put ketchup on mine.
Okay, so you're a ketchup person?
I'm a ketchup.
I've gotten so many interesting answers. I've gotten, obviously, gravy and ketchup. I've gotten hot sauce. The most interesting one for sure was hummus. Someone likes hummus on theirs. So it's a very telling on someone's personality. It's kind of like a Uper Rorschach test, so to speak, as to.
There's a book I read to my grandsons called Olson's Meat Pasty, or no, Olson's Meat Pies. It's a Swedish book.
Oh, okay.
About this guy that makes meat pies, and then his bookkeeper steals all the money, and then he doesn't have anything to buy anything, so he's putting everything in his meat pies and grinding it up, and then people are eating their pie, and they find a wristwatch and a toy soldier, and anyway, it's adorable story. And so I told Matti, my 4-year-old grandson, because I have a 1-year-old grandson too that is a very busy boy, but I love him to death, but woo, he wears me out. But Matti, I said, we're gonna go get an Olson's meat pie. So I went and I took him over to Laurie's, and we went in, we smelled it, and we loved it, and it smelled so good, and we got all the ketchup and got it, and he would not touch that.
Would not eat it.
He would not touch it.
Maybe it'll grow on him someday.
Ooh.
Well, Nheena, I can't thank you enough for coming on the podcast. This has been really great. You're a great storyteller, and not only that, but your story is super compelling, and it's just as much a piece of the story of Marquette as anything else, which is really, really cool, especially just because you love this city so much, and you can say that your story is a big part of it, and this place is too. So thank you again for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it.
It was my pleasure, and I thank you very much.
Okay, it's time for the takeaways from my chat with Nheena. The first one that I have is taking ownership of turning your dreams into realities. When Nheena was bold enough to start creating the Children's Museum, she knew that she had to roll up her sleeves and make it happen herself. Now, that's not to say that she didn't have help along the way, because she definitely did, but the start of all of it was her realization that if she didn't act on her dream, then nobody else would. And that's really powerful. Whatever dreams you yourself have, you'll undoubtedly need help along the way. But the first step of action needs to come from you and you alone. My second takeaway from my chat with Nheena is giving yourself time to succeed. Dreams don't happen overnight. And Neena's story is a prime example of that. It took years of hard work, collaboration, and ups and downs before her dream came to fruition. And in today's day and age, social media and technology and everything, we're very much looking for instant gratification. And if we don't get it from something, we just move on in search of that next thing that's going to give us that sense of gratification. But you can't do that with your dreams. You need to respect the grind. Soak in all of the good and the bad and allow yourself time to grow. You also need time to fail, because you're undoubtedly going to fail. You need time to adapt. You need time to overcome. You need time for all of it. So my challenge for everyone listening in this week that's out there chasing a dream is give yourself time. Because that just might be the difference between a dream staying a dream or it becoming your reality. Chat It Up is a bi-weekly podcast about all things Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Wherever you're listening in, please subscribe, rate, and leave me a review. You can also find Chat It Up on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you for listening in. I'm your host, Shooter, reminding you to keep your chin up and your eyes forward.